Hi, I'm Harry,
I'm Jade.
and this is our story. So we met in Malakuta when Jade was down there working.
Harry come in and introduced herself, and I said, "Yeah, we've met." And she said, "No, we haven't."
So the last 8 months for us have been pretty full on. It started just before New Year's Eve. I ended up going into hospital for severe tonsillitis and came out on the 30th after 2 days being on IV antibiotics. Jade was talking so much about this fire that was coming, and I couldn't comprehend it. I was so sick. So I just told him, take the kids, take them somewhere safe, and I just need to go home.
I grabbed the kids and took them round to Browley to their grandparents' house and dropped them off, come back and started trying to prepare for this fire that was coming.
Text message that we received is that we had to evacuate by 8 o'clock the next morning.
I stayed up prepping. 6 a.m. Harry come in and shook me awake, saying, "Get up."
And he wanted half an hour longer sleep. But I'd gone outside and the wind was swirling. It was so hot.
I got up and stuck my head out the window, and it must have been 50 plus degrees at 6 a.m. I hosed the house down and decided to go to my mum's house to try and protect that. I had earlier on decided that I'd choose my mum's house over my own just because it's our family home. We've had it for years. Meeting Joel at the boat ramp for the boat, go up to my mum's house by a river. We drove up by boat. It's like we're driving straight towards this firestorm, and it was 10 a.m. in the morning, but it was 8 o'clock at night. It was like eerily dark red, and it was scary. We drove up the river to my mum's, ran up to her house, had fire hoses set up there, and we were just hosing the whole house down. Well, it got darker and darker and hotter, and then the fire was in the sky. It was like it was burning up in the clouds, like these flames in the clouds, which up over the ridge, which was where my brother's house happened to be, which ended up being burnt down. And then we got a call from the neighbours, and they said, "Get out of there. Get out of there now. It's coming. It's bad. Get out of there." So we ran for the boat, and while I was running for the boat, I got a phone call come through. A little bit of reception must have come through, and it was Harry. And I said, "I can't talk. We're running from the fires." And then the phone cut out. It got all hot, and the wind was swirling, and there was ash swirling around us, and you could barely breathe. I was trying to get my mask out, and I'd left it in the plastic box. I was trying to rip it undone, and I was starting to panic, I couldn't get it out of this box, and I was trying to find a knife because I couldn't breathe properly. And then we headed east towards the river mouth where the boat ramp was, and both sides of the river was like just burning in the sky, like both sides, like this massive clouds, like kilometres up, like this firestorm, both sides of the river, and we were just going with it towards Mossy Point. I was looking back, we thought everything was gone, all our whole family's houses were all gone. Halfway down the river, on the way back to Mossy Point, I could see that the fire was about to hit Browley, where I'd left Harry and the kids with the grandparents. That was a horrible feeling.
The whole morning was terrible because the phone reception was out, so I couldn't hardly contact Jade. I got onto him, he's talking to me, and he's saying, we're running from the fires. Then it cuts out.
You didn't know I was up there by boat, did you?
No, had no idea he was up there by boat. So then I just lost it. Phone cut out, kept trying to call him back, and then I couldn't. I just broke down in front of Max. So breaking down in front of Maximus, who's just 12 next month, so it's pretty big for that poor little guy, not knowing if his dad is dead or not. It was pretty full on.
I told Joel I had to go because the fire was going to be hitting where the kids and Harry was. So I jumped out of the boat, ran to my car, drove to Browley, Iluka Street, and at the end of the street was just this massive fire front about to engulf Browley.
Probably 2 minutes after Jade got out of the car, this big, massive southerly just blew the whole fire back on
It
itself.
was amazing. It was like
It was incredible.
it was a miracle.
The whole afternoon was just fighting fires, and I was just waiting at the airport with the kids, trying to have conversations because we had reception out there. So I was trying to have conversations with people who didn't live anywhere near us, who could see everything happening on the internet and on the TV, but couldn't contact us. So there was a lot of distraught family members.
So I ended up being back at my mum's place fighting fires and zero phone reception for like 5 or 6 days. We were lucky we had a lot of good mates coming around and help us. There was probably 10 or so of us there most days, 24 hours a day fighting the fires. Day 2 got a bit ugly. I had been fighting fires all day the day before and hadn't drunk any water, so we had no water supply. We weren't prepared that way. I got weak and dizzy the next day, but as that started to happen, I was starting to get a little bit worried about myself.
Being with them, I just had this real weird gut feeling, and I just didn't know where Jade was, couldn't contact him, couldn't call him, so I just drove around there, and I just was like, nah, you need to go to hospital. He was in such bad condition. I've never seen anything like it. He was so bad, so I ended up driving him to hospital. He fell unconscious in the car on the way to the hospital. He started shaking, couldn't move. I got to the hospital and frantically ran in there to get the doctors to get him out of the car. So they had to pull in the stretcher out, get him in the stretcher, and then they just took him into emergency. I had to fill out a heap of paperwork, so I didn't know what was happening, but when I walked in afterwards, he was attached to machines. They were sticking needles in him everywhere, trying to find a vein because he was so dehydrated.
It was strange because I could hear everything, but I just couldn't respond. And then they pulled me out of the car and cut my overalls off. And I was jamming all these needles in me because I couldn't find a vein. I could feel all of that. It was pain, but like I couldn't react. And like I was thinking, what are they doing? And then, eventually they got a needle in and squeezed all this.
They ended up
squeezed the bags in.
They ended up putting 3 litres of fluid in him within an hour. That's how dehydrated he was. So you ended up getting out of hospital and wanting to go straight back to the fire front. But I kept him home for another 12 hours until the days that followed. He ended up being there for 5 days longer. A heap of his mates, heaps of people helping out, which was amazing.
So many to name, to thank.
Yeah, thank you everyone.
There was a day or two there where the choppers came and they were working flat out. There would have been 3 helicopters there, dumping loads of water all around the house and the gullies and stuff to the fires we couldn't get to by car. So we had about 10, 15 of us on the ground, all good mates, trying to fight it, but if we didn't have these helicopters come in and drop these loads around us, we don't know what would have happened. So we come back out to check on the house, and the house was still there, which was great. We'd only owned the place for 6 months. Everything was incinerated. There was no leaves left on anything. The grass was gone. All our water tanks, fences,
water tanks were
sheds,
melted.
shook sheds, everything was gone except for the house.
We found out later because of the communication was down, but on the same day, Malakuta, my hometown, was completely incinerated. They ended up being 150
or 60, 150 or 60, I thought.
Dwellings that were destroyed down there. All of the houses and properties that were lost, a lot of them were my friends and my family. Jade's family house was lost down there. The hardest part, yes, the fires, but we couldn't get in and out of that road. No one could leave. They had to end up leaving on boats because there was just no way of staying there.
I work in Malakuta roads were closed for well over a month, and so I couldn't get to work. Everything was burnt. The roads were all closed.
I couldn't see my friends and my family, my parents. They lived down there. Couldn't see them for, was it a month and a half or 2 months?
Something like that.
2 months.
And then when finally we could go back and things were looking like we might be able to start working again.
How many weeks of work did you do?
I've done a couple of weeks, not much at all. And then Corona hit and shut us down again. And now the border's shut. You need a special permit to get in and out. And if I go to work, when I come back, I've got to self-isolate for 14 days. So my work's down there is 12 months of the year. So every time I work, I'm going to be in isolation for the whole year every time I'm at home.
And I can't even go over the border. I can't get a permit, can't go anywhere because I'm not a worker, not an essential worker, and I can't go see my friends and family once again after going through all that in January, February, March, and now we're back doing the whole isolation thing and being away from friends and family. My mum lives over there. I don't get to see her. I won't get to see her for probably 2 months, which is really hard. One thing that has definitely been amazing that's come out of all this tragedy is Jade actually asked me to marry him in June, so that was the highlight of this year. It would be much appreciated after the year that we've been through so far. It would take a lot of stress off our shoulders.
I think this princess deserves it after what I put her through.